Hello friends, let us begin our journey into the creation of a bow. And what I have here is this beautifully propeller twisted piece of Osage that also has a few roller coasters in it. And it's intended to become a flat bow that's recurved. I forget the length. Currently it's 59 inches long, so it should, I could probably knock an inch off because it's going to be sinew backed. You got to think before you cut. Handle a 26-inch draw, no problems. Osage sinew backed, between 50 and 55 pounds. And so I'm factoring all those variables in, compiling the data, and it's coming out in the old computer as, yeah, it'll work. And so there's some things to consider. It is a pie-shaped piece. So the further I go down, the narrower the bow will become. Now, this is Osage. It's got a heartwood and a sapwood. Check. And the conventional wisdom is you have to go down to a thick ring in the heartwood to have a bow of decent draw weight. And decent draw weight by American standards is different than a decent draw weight by UK standards. I'm not talking warble here, you know. Oh my gosh. Joe Gibbs. Ah! I could not conceive of drawing those heavy war bows. But hunting weight bow, you know, 35 pounds on up. 35 pounds is not legal for deer hunting, but you know, with the proper tip on the arrow, I'm not going to go beyond that. But 50 to 55 pounds, wonderful hunting weight bow. It'll do what you need. Not hunting polar bears or moose. Plural of moose is mice, or mises. So it'll work. Okay, back to conventional wisdom, analyzing it. If I was to go deep into this, and it's unnecessary for a sinew-backed bow, self bow, yes. Going down into a nice, thick growth ring, the bow would be 1/8 of an inch thick. So cancel that. I am looking at, well, you're going to look at it too. Actually, a pretty extremely thin layer of sapwood. That means that, fighting conventional wisdom, because I am me, if I leave all that sapwood on, I'm going to have a beautiful bow as viewed from the side. I will have that whitish sapwood going into, you know, electric yellow at first, but then it'll almost turn black over time. Sinew-backed Osage bow. And it will be strong enough. We're not compromising diddly squat by leaving that thin layer of sapwood underneath the sinew. And I am envisioning the final bow in 80 years, in 50 years, in 10 years if it's out in the sunshine, maybe in 6 if it gets a lot of sunshine. Picture this. Sinew over that light colored sapwood, thin layer. Sinew is doing all the work, BTW. Sapwood and then that dark hardwood, almost white and black. It's going to be a beautimous bow. Okay, so that I'm not going to be grinding away, going down to a ring in the heartwood. Okay, now when you have these twisties, I've often thought I can take a strip of flexible wood, plywood, because it's stable this way and it's stable in this way. So it will stay relatively straight when you're eyeing it. It's not going to warp and create, as you're looking along the flat surface, a wow. If I took a thin strip of plywood and I secured it along the back, I should be able to see whether or not it will be straight through the tips, through the handle, because I'm following that plywood. But I'm not going to trust that. What I'm going to do is I'm creating this bow. Is first I'm going to knock off that layer, getting down to what I want to be the back. And again, it's going to have the sinew on it. A good layer, maybe a good layer and a half, maybe 2. And so that sinew is going to be taking up all the tensional work. So I don't need to go deep. Where I'm going with this is I'm going to have quite a bit of width here to play with. It's not going to be, if I had a tape measure, let's see here. When I get down to that sapwood layer, when I resolve having a constant fiber, because it's going to be almost a parallel bowl, parallel in width, almost its all length. When I get down and do the side here, so I've got the thickness of the bow, you see, because every time I go down layers and every time I go perpendicular to get the side of the bow, it's getting narrower and narrower. I don't have a lot to play with here. Currently it is, it's all thinking. It is 2 3/4 inches wide there. 'Tis less than that there, and consider the tips are going to be narrower. Here it's 2 1/2. When I knock that out, down, I'm going to have not much left over, about 1 1/2 inches. You know, in the width of the finished bow. That's why I'm not going down too many layers, and also I want to have that contrasting color. And so I don't have a lot of room to play with to make sure that it's straight through both tips and center of the handle. So I'll probably have to put a side bend in it. But anyway, let's work away. And I'm not going to go too crazy with going through that inner bark that's white down to the sapwood here. I just want to scrape it off because I can do the rest with a scraper. I'm using a draw knife now. Now, this has been the hobgoblin of many a bow maker. I'm going to put it on my shaving horse. I'm going to clamp it down. You know what I mean? I'm sitting on a razor's edge. So what the heck do I do? Well, if nothing else, if you get nothing else out of this video, I took a 2x4 and I cut V's in it. Look at that. That V straight up and down, more or less, in a more angle here. That V is symmetrical. I'm working with a twist, and so watch this. Ha ha! Boy, I'm clever. Nope, that's not the right orientation. So I'm going to spin it. Oh, look at that. It's more or less flat right here for working. And it's not going to tip over. Trust me. And so here we go. Now for your edification, I don't know what that means. Fill me in. I'm going to clamp that down just slightly behind it. For your amusement, a lot of, well, I'm just going to talk about me. I'm not going to put words into your mouth. When you're working with Osage and you're going through layers into the heartwood, I do that too. I'm multi-dimensional here. It's almost a splitting kind of a thing and not a shaving kind of a thing. If you have a super sharp draw knife, and I'm sure that a lot of people are able to do this, but I'm not because I fumble. If you have a super sharp draw knife, you're going to cut into your target layer. Whereas if you have, say what I like to do is, I never sharpen one side, and I keep one side sharp. When I'm going down to that target layer, I use the less sharp side, and it just kind of skims across my target layer instead of digging in. I'm also, and what I'm doing here is I have very little inner bark to remove. So I'm not going to use this action. Oh, I got down to my target layer of sapwood. I'm not going to worry so much about removing all that inner bark. And plus I've got a cushion because I'm going to be using a clamp. I could, and it doesn't really matter because it's sinew back, but you always practice doing the best job you can. You've got a clamp and you're clamping down on it. You could dent that with the clamp. And so I've got a little bit of cushion. I'm leaving just a little bit of that. Oh, look at that. I can use this as a scraper too and get down to that target layer. Because there's a differential in cohesion. If it's adhesion, it's something glued to itself. If it's cohesion, it's something glued to something else. There's a difference in cohesion between that inner bark and that outer layer. I'm getting right down to a single growth ring in the sapwood. There, look at that, how easy it is. And it actually is easier than you think if you've never gone into the target ring in Heartwood with Osage. Again, you don't have a super sharp draw knife, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. You probably have more skill than me with the draw knife, like Dreamcraft bows. I mean, that guy can take, like a draw knife, finish bow, because he's a draw knifist. I'm a raspist, so my skills with a draw knife are okay, but they're not up to Dreamcraft bows level. And that's why I use a somewhat dull draw knife. But, oh, look at that. I'm pretty spry for an old man. Now, on this, you've seen it before. You see this peg? Osage, of course. I made a bow out of this piece of wood. I've got 2 holes down here. And when I'm working like this on the side, I'm putting pressure on the bow, so that peg is going to keep that stave from going sideways. And so I can put it over here when I'm working on the other side. That's another handy tip. When you use a shaving horse, make some of these at different angles and different, orientations of the angles. It helps greatly. I don't need to flatten off that bottom. And also put some pegs down there so your bow is not going to do this stuff. 2 handy tips. You've learned stuff already. Okay, now I'm going to continue. I don't think I can do a full hour because my phone doesn't have that much memory. Let's get this over here. And you notice this? I don't have that kind of shaving horse where you push down on the foot lever and then it, very traditional, and it clamps. I think they're called dumbhead. Because, now I'm going to put my peg in there. I've got the ability, especially when I'm doing tips and stuff like that, to work off the bench, and I don't need to use my feet or anything. I'm free. Look, I could stand on one leg like I'm not going to do that because I don't want to damage the bow. If I had good balance. Stand on one leg like a flamingo. Not a flamenco. They're dancing on 2 feet. Now I am a cheerleader, and not in a silly way, for you who haven't made bows yet. Is there anything that I've done thus far that would challenge you? And I don't think so. I'm not digging in that far. I'm just kind of scraping along here. I'm using sinew. I've been corrected before. On the back, which I love sinew. You made a bow, and you pulled it back an inch too far and crack. You don't have a bow anymore. If that bow that you just broke, and I'm talking really to a specific person that gave me, and I already told you this, in good humor here, you gave me those wonderful hickory staves. Wonderful. There's one of them right up there, and it's straight. But I digress. If you would have sinew back that short black locust bow, and your broken bow is a lesson to everyone else, he made this wonderful, and it was beautiful, short black locust bow. If it was sinew back, you would still have a bow. That's it. Do not be afraid of sinew. What are you scared of? Oh, it's not going to look pretty on the first bow. It's not going to hold on the first bow. Well, if you're careful in the preparation of the back, and you're not careful in laying the sinew, it's ugly and uneven, but it goes from the tip to the tip, it's going to work. all those broken bows that you've created would be awesome bows. I think this guy watches my channel, and the reason I say that is because I found him, and I wind up cyber stalking some of you. You know, you've got an actual thumbnail and not just a blue circle with a letter on there. Typically that means that you don't have, say, a channel. I went to his, and he made this honey locust bow. It's really cool, and it didn't break, by the way. A very short bow. I think he called it a Cherokee short bow. Honey locust. Really nice little bow. And I did not mean any disrespect. Again, I am a cheerleader for people sinew backing. And I said, the first thought I had after that's a nice bow, this is accurate, I don't know, old man moment, was, I bet you that would be a great bow if it's sinew backed. And that doesn't mean it wasn't a great bow. Let me say that. I am an equal opportunity bow maker, and I love how many people now are making bows, unlike when I was learning. And there was very few books on it, no YouTube. I was in a vacuum. I used this one. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of this book because it's an awesome book for edible plants, for building shelters, for making clothes, for making arrowheads, but I find the bow making portion of it extremely lacking, and it led me down a false path, and I made so many failed bows because I was following their methodology, and it just didn't freaking work. You know, for a couple of years, I must be doing something wrong, I'm following their directions, and I didn't make a successful bow. And now, because I've made 2 or 3 bows in my life, stay humble, or I don't want to be your friend. I realized the error of my ways. I was following advice that didn't lead me to success. But nowadays, oh my gosh, the only thing that's stopping you is inertia, is making that first bow, sinew backing that first bow. There's nothing to be afraid of. If you screw up, big deal. You learn something. If your bow breaks, whatever. How many bows have I broke unintentionally and intentionally? I've probably broken more bows than a lot of people have made. But it isn't even fear, you know. You get to a point, it's almost love-hate. I'm working on this bow. And in my mind, I want it to work out, but also in my mind, I don't care if it breaks. I'll just make another one. You have to almost have that attitude is, I don't give a rip. Whatever. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. If it breaks, and I learn something, I'm as successful as if it didn't break. It's like, whatever. You know, I'm not a brave bow maker. I just don't care. I want to make awesome bows. I've made some awesome bows. But if that individual bow doesn't work, whatever. Who cares? I'll just make another one. And I've learned something. I know how bad that sounds. I do. But I think that's the secret. If you ain't breaking them, you ain't making them. Anyway, let's shut up here and get back to work. And again, I'm not good. I admit this. You know where my failing is being able to put an edge on something. And fortunately, that benefits me when I'm working Osage. This is beautiful. It has not tipped over once, having that sharp edge down there, because of these. There's always a way of doing something that will allow you to have an easy time doing it. Let's turn this thing around. And see, it's kind of, there are traces of my target layer on there, but there is also traces of inner bark. And again, I'll just scrape them off, and it won't take time, and I'm not even going to do that until it's almost finished, because we're talking how much thickness? Like almost nothing. It's not going to affect the dimensions of the bow. Not at all. And I'm picturing it. This bow will be successful. I want it to be, because I don't want to ruin a piece of Osage. Especially a nice one like this. Yes, it might not be aligned between the tips and the handles, but I've got 59 inches here. Even though it's a wide rectangle, I've got 59 inches to jack it what? Maybe a ½ inch at the most. Over the course of 59 inches, that is not putting on much of a bend radius. And with heat, that's no big deal. That's why you should not be afeared of working with a wonky piece of Osage. And you know what's going to be super easy? Is getting those roller coasters out of there. Oh my gosh, it's oriented like this. And what I mean by this, it's wide here, it's narrow here. And to get those roller coasters out of that narrow piece is nothing. Even if you're not going to use your knee and do it by eye, you could take a sturdy workbench that's near your heat source and find a clamping way so you can just stick it in there. And I'm not talking taking the time to unscrew and screw a Jorgensen clamp, but just having some blocks in there to hold it. Rush it over there and just, I've got the bow here, it's clamped here, not clamped, but blocked, and just getting those bends out. That's nothing. That's literally nothing to take hot Osage and get those bends out. Oh man, I'm in my glory. Okay, now a tangent while I'm doing this. You're just watching carefully, maybe not paying attention to what I'm talking about. And again, I'm not going right down to the target ring. I can scrape it with whatever, you know, a knife, draw a knife. Don't want that to slide off. You're fascinated by how this is sitting on a knife edge, but my magic blocks is keeping it from and believe me, I thought about taking a circular saw and setting the shoes so I can do angled cuts and running down into my shaving horse, but I don't want to do that to my shaving horse. Just take stinking 2x4. Another nice thing, and I'm not going to do it, is I could violate a ring right here, mid-limb, sinew back it, and the bow's going to be fine. Maybe not if it was a 150-pound bow, but you know, hunting weight bow by American standards. It'll be just fine. But I'm not going to violate a ring. For one reason, I'm not going down to a certain ring in the heartwood, so I mean, scraping off the bark is like child's play. Uh-oh, it's leaning the wrong way. Rotate. There, I am now aligned. Isn't that slick? I love it. Osage bows are the mother of invention. There we go. Another interesting thing I found is when you screw up when you're working down to a single growth ring, it always happens when you're at near the end of the bow in a very bad place. I have to fight myself. Stop going down to the target ring. I'm a guy, so I have no self-control. It's like, stop. My body doesn't listen to my mind. Okay, I got it. All these pearls of wisdom. Now see, I still have a smattering of very thin sapwood on there. Now I could actually make a self bow out of this, leaving these little layers of sapwood on. And they're so inconsequential, it doesn't matter. So next step, and I say that with great force, is I want to resolve this, and by that I mean getting a single fiber down this side. It is going to be, again, almost parallel. So, and there's no knots that would cause it to go like this. Because when you have a knot, you have to keep that fiber intact, following it around that knot. Once I get one nice fiber along the side, I mean an unbroken fiber from this going along the side, then I can take my Scribe-O-Matic, put a pencil in it, and then just scribe a parallel line and work to that line, or else not. Again, it's almost parallel, so I could just do the same darn thing using my draw knife. Okay, so here we go. And I'm going to have it oriented like this, and I don't necessarily have to use this block anymore because it's sitting on a flat edge. Now this is the tang. And things happen. If the Jorgensen is on this side, it might tip over because it can like move. If it's on this side, it'll fight it, but I don't think it's going to affect it. So I want to draw a knife. Think of, even though it's curved right here, I can still envision 90 degrees to the face. Easy. And if it's not perfect, yeah, whatever. Now instead of doing this, starting here and going that way, I'm going to start here, using my sharp edge. Yeah, that's good. And keep in mind, as I'm going this way, I'm going to have to rotate it, so I have to pay attention to that. Maybe doing a little bit at a time. If I was to do this, go that way into it, I've got a long stretch of Osage, and I risk ripping it, having things go awry, and splitting it off, and it becoming really ugly. So I'm going to work at, keep parallel, a little at a time. So look at, I'm not getting any ripping fibers here because I'm working this way. Keeping in mind parallelity, so I'm now and also, picture this. I have two distinct colors here. I've got the sapwood, I've got the heartwood. I want to have an even thickness of sapwood and heartwood as it runs along there. And I'm getting that. I might show you. As it goes along. Parallelity, or whatever. Whoops. See, it wound up splitting a little bit, but not bad. Because, for one reason, I'm not starting here and going that way. Now, what I can do, because this was split, this piece was split, so it naturally kind of followed a fiber, is when I reach the halfway point, center of the handle, now I can spin it around and work that side. It would be clumsy to have, yeah, here I go, I'm working all the way, and this is what it would be like. Like, I can do that, but there's not much purchase right here now. I'll just spin it around, work the other side, and get the same distinct, even thickness of that sapwood and that heartwood. And that'll be more or less kind of good. Now, there isn't as much happening at the center of the handle when you don't have a constant bend from tip to tip. I like to have an almost imperceptible bend in the handle. And that is, let me grab a ball, I'll be right back. Intermission, stare at the exhaust on this old Suzuki, isn't that cool? There we go. I've got a, so you can witness, I don't have a piece of cloth or something. This is cement floor, so I'm gonna like string it this way. And I did, I refined that handle. Look how shiny and pretty that is. If I have a certain radius of string follow here, it's going to exaggerate it because it's like a lever arm. If I get a certain level of string follow out here, it's not going to exaggerate it. It's not going to give me as much string follow distance right here. And so I like to have kind of a, and it does bend a little bit in the handle, but you can see how the bend radius tightens up as it goes to the tips. And in this case, the bend stops right here, and that's what I like in one of these long bows. It's kind of a logarithmic. Logarithmic. This is made from a tree. Approach to the bend in a bow. You can also tell how well tailored a bow is when you unstring it. It's going to get a little string follow. Where is that string follow? If it's dead center of the handle, oops. If it is out near the tips, you done did all right. Back to this thing. Now, I think actually, I was kind of talking about, I'll do an hour-long video and I'm just rambling, this, that, and other thing. But my phone will cut off here pretty soon because it doesn't have much memory. And other than that, this is not my bow. It's going to be somebody else's bow. So I need to concentrate while I'm doing this. And I have, talking and working just doesn't work out that well for me. Unless I'm doing very simple things. And doing this process, kind of critical. But I will say that 1, 2, 3 motorcycles here. I've got a half one behind my workbench there on this castered thing. That's my half motorcycle, which is a TS125 motor that I will. It's not starting out of stock. I mean, this is a Frankenbike. So I don't care if I keep it stock. I'm going to bore it out. I'm going to port it. So that 73 TS125 could be getting upwards of I know, it's a lot, 20 horsepower, maybe a little more. That's enough for this old man. And I was looking, I actually have my old Penton jersey. Penton, the motorcycle, American made, the frame and everything. But components, it was pieced together to create the ultimate international 6-day trial spikes. I'm going to create my own kind of Penton. All I have is a frame, gas tank, and that partial engine. I'm going to get alloy wheels. I'm going to see about getting actual period, I don't know, fork legs, shocks, and the best shocks of the period back here, rear shocks. And actually create my own version of a Penton. I do. I like those old bikes. The old two-strokes. Two-stroke motors feed your soul. Well, with that, I'm going to continue working on this, and I was wrong. It is raining. And, yeah, that's it. Then I've got a lot of sinew to pound. Thank you for watching. Hope you gained something out of this. If nothing else, and you're an experienced bow maker, I mean, seriously, these things are going to save a lot of anger. When this thing keeps like tipping down, they work well. The variability in the sharpness of the draw knife along the length. If you work in multiple woods, I mean, obviously you can have more than one draw knife. I just have this one antique draw knife that you can look at the handle. The handle's split. I made a piece out of cedar, glued it down with JB Weld, and then found the other piece. I'll just leave it at that. This side split too. I was batoning with it, and the shock broke the handle in half, so I just had both pieces, glued that together. Don't baton with your draw knife. You've got old wooden handles. Yep, that's all. We covered everything necessary for the continuation of our species.